All right, so hello everyone. My name is Vanessa Vassall. I am the National Programs Director for Maternal Health and Environmental Justice for Black Millennials for Flint. And I'm super excited today to be a part of Children's Environmental Health Day. This year again, we'll be speaking to you virtually, and I'm so excited to be joined by two of the most amazing food experts that I know. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, and then we'll just get started with the conversation. Who would like to go first?
Hello, everyone. I'm Tambra Stevenson, founder and CEO of WANDA, which is Women Advancing Nutrition, Dietetics, and Agriculture. We're celebrating our 5th anniversary. And if you see behind my shoulder, it's little Wanda, who was part of the inspiration, but really my daughter was the inspiration of making her. And many may ask, why Wanda? Well, for one, I was the only African American in my nutrition class at the time at Oklahoma State University, and I didn't know the field of nutrition even existed as a kid. And so going beyond the Betty Crocker stereotypes and home economics, it's a real science. And so for me, I thought, how can we create new pipelines and platforms of more Black women and girls seeing themselves as these food heroes in our communities and changing the narrative and image of how we've seen food in our community from farm to health. And so for me, it was important to think about education and advocacy and innovation through the creation of children's books like Little Wanda Finds a Cure for Nana, who Nana has diabetes like mine, who passed from complications back in Oklahoma, but also understanding that it's so important for us to change policies in our mindsets in our communities. And so how can we use the kitchen table to gather women and create sisterhood supper conversations that are based on self-care? And we do that through our WANDA Academy that we launched during the pandemic, through the support of Sibley and DC Healthcare Finance, but now also developing the WANDA Fellowship of placing Black women in stores where they can learn about how to do community nutrition and also learn how to get the proper mentorship and leadership coaching in order to be that food share, whether it's in the form of a registered dietitian or not. And then lastly, developing our endowment at Oklahoma State to ensure that there's in perpetuity funding available through WANDA for Black women pursuing careers in agriculture and nutrition. So those are just small ways in which we're looking to make change and go beyond that, as well as we recently secured a design patent for our little Wanda doll. But we really want to just help our generation and the generation next to inspire and know that they can be the change that they want to see through the power of food in our communities.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your work. I've been so impressed with what you all have done. I'm only familiar with it in the DC area, and to know that you're doing all of these things nationally and of course internationally. I'm just super excited to have you as a part of our conversation. And also we have Eloisa Trinidad, who will talk about her work as well.
Thank you, Tamra. I'm just so amazed by both of you and so impressed. Hi, everyone. My name is Eloisa Trinidad. I am the chapter president at HIPHOP is Green in New York City and the executive director at Chili's on Wheels in New York as well. So both organizations are vegan organizations, and our focus is food justice and food sovereignty. And beyond that, we also focus on organic farming as well as sustainability. And so our work really focuses on making healthy food accessible to communities in need. And both organizations do that quite a bit differently. So HIPHOP is Green is the first hip-hop plant-based organization in the world. We have been around 12 years as a national organization. And our approach is really working directly with the students, the teachers, the school staff. We provide green dinners. We use the power of music to really bring about change within our communities. As everyone knows, hip-hop is global, is worldwide, is one of the biggest ways in which the youth really receives information. And so we believe in the power of hip hop, and we believe it's a positive force. And so we really use it to reach our youth. besides green dinners and working directly in the schools through that and through food policies such as the Healthy Future Students and Earth Act, which now is looking to make plant-based food accessible to children across the country and also benefit Black, Indigenous, and women farmers. We also have our Cherry Street project, Cherry Street Farm Project. So in that project, we're actually working directly with the students, teaching them Black and Indigenous traditional ways of growing food and really preparing them to be self-sustainable. So our focus on veganism extends from animal welfare, but also creating communities that are self-sustaining. And we believe in the power of food, as Tamra was saying, and through Chili's on Wheels, we work directly with students by actually providing them plant-based foods. So a lot of our students are food insecure. They're also housing insecure. And we have expanded our program during the pandemic to also deliver food at both organizations. So our work is, directly providing the food, providing the nutrition education, and also teaching the farming practices that can hopefully lead us to liberation.
Thank you so much. Eloisa, I did want you to talk a little bit about how you connect your work to policy. You mentioned the policy at the beginning of your introduction. And I'd like you to just talk about that, because a lot of times I think it can also be hard to see how what we're doing for our community or our loved ones can actually turn into a policy that can impact a wider audience.
Absolutely. For us, it's really important to not only directly impact community, but to work on systemic change. And we see policy as a way to do that. We also think school food is extremely important. If our children are not properly nourished, they're not able to pay attention and they're not able to succeed later on in life. For a lot of our children, they're already showing signs of diabetes and heart disease by the time they're 10 years old. And so not only do we have the issue of food access and food insecurity, where people actually don't have food to eat, but also malnutrition stemming from not eating healthy food. And so for the Healthy Future Students and Earth Act, that actually came out of students in New York City complaining that Meatless Mondays was very dairy heavy, and they were still not getting what they were requesting, which was just, we want healthier food. The food in schools, are the same contracts from, the prison system. It is the same people providing our children the food. The USDA has so many regulations as to how and what is served in school, with animal agriculture and the dairy industry having a really huge stronghold, to the point that the first drink offered to our kids is not water, it's milk, right? And water is the most basic thing that you should be drinking. And so we really want to disrupt those systems and make those policy changes. Our parents don't have the time to get a doctor's note. Our parents are working, they're working multiple jobs. A lot of them don't have enough funds. And so when you make certain restrictions, if your child just wants water or wants a different type of milk, for people of the global majority, Black people, people of color, we are not gonna process dairy the same way as other folks, right? And we're lactose normal. We're not raised in, our background is not in dairying. And so there's also just racial issues when it comes to food policy across the board. The system is racist, regardless of what we're looking at, whether we're looking at food policy or education policy and so on. And so we're looking to change that and also support our Black and Indigenous farmers and our women farmers as well. And so that's why policy for us is important.
Thank you so much. Man, I have so many comments to make, but we have such a limited time. Tambra, I definitely want to pass the mic to you, so you can talk a little bit about the work, some more about the work that you're doing. In particular, when I look at what you do, I'm super impressed and interested learning more about the advocacy side, about the innovation side. And I just want you to share what you've been up to at WANDA, and for the folks that are watching for Children's Environmental Health Day, takeaways that they may have that they can incorporate in their work inspired by your expertise and what you've created.
Yeah, I can, happy to do so. And I just wanted to touch on some of the pieces that even Eloise shared, even regarding the comment about milk coming from Oklahoma, where we are meat cattle country, and having active cowboys and cattle ranchers in my family, it is super important, and why I believe not just nutrition education in a Western context matters, but an Afrocentric context matters, because having just traced my own roots back to Nigeria, to Fulanis, where cattle also is very much a part of the landscape, and actually drinking milk from the cattle. But if I'm back in Nigeria, the first thing in the ruga, which is house and for village, you're greeted with forward and no, which is milk and millet. And so you drink it from the calabash, and that is how you're welcomed. And I think it's so important to understand these different like mini narratives under the master narrative around like context, cultural pieces do matter in the conversation. And that's why for us at WANDA, it was so critical to produce the children's book like Little Wanda, and her journeys, and having kids go on this discovery of understanding like our food and culture and our heritage, and celebrate it. Strong food for strong people is our message. And to understand the indigenous food ways of not only in the Americas, but of Africa, and how what it's happening in the global landscape of ag and nutrition, that if we're not aware of it and we're not taught this knowledge that's being missed out of every classroom in this country, then it creates a dynamic where, as so much arable land is available in Africa, we are actually, not even realizing a change is happening under our very eyes in the shifting of a food system that is becoming more fast food available on the continent. And how do we connect as a global Black community to understand that our children here, as much as there, are being exposed to food in an environment that's changing, where they're more accepting of Western food systems, and that changes future leaders and who votes and who shapes policies and who is in front of their family and media and what they choose to advocate for. So the more that I find that we educate our children to have cultural pride in themselves, cultural pride in how that is expressed through food and how it's celebrated through our fashion, our music, like all of these pieces is how we incorporate it. And so being able to think about like, how can we leverage technology, digital media, now being a PhD student at American studying media, technology, and democracy, around how food is this expression of democracy. How can we activate our kids to be these food citizens that we see like happening across the pond in Europe? About when we think ourselves as food citizens, we've already been voting with our fork, but how now do we align our value systems even more and saying like, now take that into city council and shape policy. I've already had my kids this year testify on nutrition equity bills, and to understand that this is what it means to take advantage of our membership in this country, that to be able to vote, to own businesses, to have land, these are our birthrights. And if we don't fully use our memberships, this is how membership gets revoked. They'll revoke it regardless, but if we need to use it or we'll lose it. And in my opinion, this is why this idea of incorporating this idea of every woman, every girl is a food hero unlocks this potential and power that has been dormant or has been relegated into this idea that we should just be supporting other businesses versus creating our own. And that's how we can lead and make a difference, is showing our children the pathway to ownership, to leadership, and to seeing the value in their voices to speak up for the change that we want to see in our communities.
Oh my, so many Oh, you had so many gems. Eloisa, did you want to make any reflections before I make any comments?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things, as Tambra was saying, is to teach our children about colonization and how that has shaped the food systems, in the Americas and in Africa. So the term indigenous is not just for people of, the New World, as, it would be called, but all over the world. Europe colonized 84% of the world, changing food systems across the globe, and even with, our African ancestors, there were so many different groups that were brought over. So, your ancestors may be Fulani, mine might be different. And so teaching all those different groups and the different traditions, the different food traditions that came from these various people, these various indigenous people, whether they were indigenous to the Americas, to Africa, or to other parts of the world. And, the children get so excited, when we do these green dinners and they're part of the process of cooking, when we're teaching them to grow food in traditional ways, and they feel so empowered. We're directly in the classrooms. We have all these hip hop artists just rapping about food and growing food, and they're taking notes, and they're taking out their phones. What was that film you told me about? And so our approach is really just liberation. And as vegan organization that are Black and Latinx founded, we believe that just as anybody else, we can exist in the wholeness of who we are. And if that wholeness of who we are is about being kind and thinking of justice for other beings, we want to empower that. We want to empower our children to be the whole beings that they are. And just like any other child, think about sustainability, think about change. How do I impact the world? And so, that's our approach. And we're just amazed by how our youth really is so determined and so focused into affecting change for their own communities. And I think a lot of times that's taken away from our youth because, as Black people and as Afro-Indigenous people and so on, we're so constantly having to think just about survival and how do I make it through the day? Am I going to get stabbed today? Am I going to die? You know what I mean? And so we want our children to know that they're capable, and just like everyone else, they're part of this world. And, we have been protecting the planet for very long, and we still have that power regardless of where in the world we are.
Thank you so much for that. And Tambra, do you have any final thoughts? We're wrapping up. Also, please let people know how they can get in touch with you, learn more about WANDA, purchase your book, purchase a WANDA doll. And then I'll also, right when you're done, Eloise, you can jump right in and do the same thing. Let people know how they can follow you, your work, as well as the policy you mentioned earlier, how they can endorse that if that's something that they choose to do.
Yeah, I would say that always think about how do our values become reflected in everyday life. If we choose to say that we value our planet, we value our community, we value Black businesses, or we value our children's health, how are the decisions that we're making every day reflect that? And so for me, that was building an organization, building really this character, little Wanda, to express about how do we begin to humanize something that has been dehumanized, not only our bodies and our children's, but also our food. And so food should be alive. It should give us life. It's not just fuel, it's medicine too. And so to be able to celebrate that our cultural foods also are medicine is so critically important. And so if you believe in the work that we're doing at WANDA, you can go to iamwanda.org. We love for you to connect with us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Thank you. And Eloise, the same thing. How can they find you, your work, and more about your policy?
So call your representatives, your senators, so we can get, more vegetables, grains, and fruits to our students. And I think, my request for folks is to think about food justice in the entirety of what it is, food sovereignty, right? So the access and the power for us to make our own choices, to grow our own food, and all of the beings that are caught in the food system. So from the folks who are not getting the food, but to those farm workers who are also being exploited, to the land that's also being exploited. I mean, right now, Bill Gates is the biggest landowner in the United States. There's something awfully wrong with that. And so, for our work, hiphopisgreen.com is, the hip hop organization that's focused on food justice, and you can find us online, just Hip Hop is Green. Please support us. Our Cherry Street Farm project just launched. We also just developed a 10-week sustainability program for our kids. And so that's over in Seattle, and we're also still providing food assistance. And Chilies on Wheels is chiliesonwheels.org, and you can find us online and also on Instagram as well.
Give a shout out to Just Strategies, Dwayne Wharton, who actually brought the three of us together in our separate work in food justice. And thank you again. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of Children's Environmental Health Day this year, tunes into all the other sessions that are going to be happening today, and of course, engage your community and engage online to get folks to advocate for children when it comes to their environmental health. So thank you all, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.